Hi everyone, I'm Mackenzie. Welcome back to Teacher FYI, where I share new teacher tips every week. This is the second of two videos that focus on teacher mental health and well-being, where I sit down with my sister Megan, who is a therapist in Sacramento. In the first video, we talked about what causes teacher burnout and signs to look out for if you are experiencing it. And today we are focusing on ways that we can actually cope with burnout and some additional self-care tips for teachers. So you've shared like the signs of burnout and everything. So what are some additional like ways we can actually cope with burnout if we
Yeah.
are experiencing it?
Yes. Good question. So I have, and it's actually a great segue because you just mentioned like finding that support system, and that's a big one. So I have seven main ways that we can be resilient when we're faced with burnout. And so this can either be before we're burned out, we can start putting these things into place, or it can be we're noticing we're burned out and we need to really up doing some of these things to help ourselves. And I want to cite, because I didn't come up with this list, it's actually research based. And so Emily Nagoski is a researcher, and I first came across her work because she did I'm a relationship and sex therapist, and she does a really great book on women's sexuality, and she talks a lot about how stress impacts our body's ability to feel pleasure. And then she started looking more and more at stress and burnout. There's seven main things that we can do. So one of the ones I love the most, and I have been putting into place throughout the pandemic, is moving our bodies. And so exercise is really important. And it doesn't have to be this high intense, training for the Olympics exercise. It just really is that, like, move your body. It could even be dancing around your house. But getting our, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like teachers were normally like on our feet all the time. And then this
Mhm.
year specifically has changed. Many of us, when we were working from home or are working from home, like sitting down was not something we were used to. Like I had
Right.
to like actually remind
Yeah.
myself to.
Yes, that is such a good point. Teachers were using movement to release the stress cycle without even knowing you were doing it,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it was just constant.
I
And
was
so
always
all of
hitting
a
my
sudden,
sets, and now it's like, no.
yeah. Yeah. So all of a sudden your body's like, we're not moving at all.
Yeah.
And so we have to be really conscious to add movement. So that's one of the main ways. Another one is breathing, and we have to be mindful about the type of breath we can take. So right now, because I'm talking to you on video and we're being recorded and I'm kind of feeling a little bit nervous, like I'm breathing kind of shallow breaths into my chest. And when we do that, our body's actually sending messages to my brain like, you're stressed out, you're stressed out, you're stressed out. But if I take a moment to really let myself first have the posture
Mhm.
that I can breathe more deeply, and then breathe into our diaphragm. So this is nice too, because we all know our exercise classes that we take on YouTube or on Peloton teach us usually how to breathe well. But when we breathe into our diaphragms, our nervous system is getting this cue. Oh, the body's breathing more slowly. It's breathing deeply into the diaphragm. Our nervous system is cueing our brain, we're safe right now. We're safe right now. We're safe right now. So we can, I think, Mackenzie, you've told me a lot of teachers are adding this into the day for students, is
Mhm.
like brain breaks and like breathing exercises and stuff. So this is a great thing that we can do during the
Yeah.
day.
I know. I think it is important for teachers to know to do it themselves. I know, like, if you're putting a brain break on, some of us will be like, oh, yeah, we can catch up on this lesson plan really quick.
Right.
But also, like, we need to do it too. I
Yeah.
think that is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
serious.
Well, I'll tell you, as a therapist, I use this with my clients, and I notice that the clients that I'm teaching breathing exercises to, I'm super calm in their sessions because I'm doing it with them. And I'm like, oh, that was really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do it with your students, you
Yeah.
guys.
So the third tip is something that Mackenzie, you already touched on when you're talking about support system. So talking to others. If we just put into words how we're feeling, what's going on, what we're thinking, even if it's venting, like I don't want any advice. I don't want any tips. I just want to be able to complain for a bit and talk to you about how it is. When we talk to others and then they're able to be like, oh man, that sucks. Oh, I'm feeling that too. That is a huge stress relief because we bond and our bodies experience bonding hormones when we do that. And even if the actual situation doesn't change at all, so it still sucks, everything's still the way that it is, it feels more manageable to us because we feel less alone.
Yeah. I feel that's one of the most important things I try to tell first year teachers too, is to find that person where you can vent with, where you can be
Mhm.
completely honest with, go to and just be like, wow, today was hard.
Yeah,
And like laugh about it, bond over it, and know you're not alone for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so the fourth one is Mackenzie does this very well, and this is laughter.
Hell
So, um, so, like true laughter, where you're with another person and you just are feeling silly, or you have an inside joke and you have one of those deep belly laughs, or you get the giggles and you can't stop, or you're watching something that really lifts your mood and you laugh. We release so much stress and laughter. And so that is a great one.
that's a new favorite. I like
Yes. And I know, Mackenzie, you're really good at, I think talk to others and laughter probably are the ones you do so naturally because you love chatting with other people and then finding things to laugh about. So I hope that helps you.
that.
um, so the fifth point is to speak to loved ones. And this is similar to the talk to others, but like Mackenzie was saying, talking to others can be, like a buddy teacher who you talk about work stuff with. But speaking to our loved ones, people who have known us for a long amount of time that we have a deep love with, um, is on even a deeper level of how that releases stress, and we feel a lot of safety. So when we're talking to people that we love, so when I talk about loved ones, this is another thing we can get in compare and despair about. We can often feel as adults like, oh, I don't have enough friends, or I don't, everyone else has all these people to talk to and I don't. The reality is, most of us, if we really think about like the safest people, the people that we can tell anything to and we know will be loved and accepted, there's probably one or two people that meet that. And then there's some people that, like, some topics are really good and then some aren't. But it is really, if you have one person that meets that, that's great. So don't put pressure on yourselves that you need to build this like huge community of people that you tell everything to. But just having those one or two people that you can turn to. I know for me, it's my husband, and I can just like be my real self, and I can cry and I can open up about the hard things, and just having his presence is so supportive to me and such a relief to me in my stress. So speaking to loved ones on that deep level is really, really important. The other one is crying. So this is number 6 on my list. So crying, um, and I don't think this is probably new to teachers. I feel like teachers are a population that understands that crying can be helpful.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are raised to think that crying isn't okay and that you're weak if you cry. But there is research that shows that when we cry, our bodies produce a hormone that increases happiness. So having that crying release actually is very important and very helpful. And you might have noticed, actually, this is a question for you, Mackenzie. Did you notice that during the pandemic, because there was so much pressure and so much stress, that it was even hard to cry sometimes, even though you needed to?
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I think it goes with that stress. Like, I think it's just like because we have this constant stress, like it's
Yeah.
even harder to process that. And
Yeah.
it's like we're like frozen almost in that.
Yeah, yeah, it's all just inside and frozen.
Yeah.
That's a good term for it. And so that's a real warning sign for burnout, is like, I can't even get to the place that I can talk about this and cry. Like
Mhm.
that means our bodies are really tight and really under a lot of stress. So listen to those other ones on the list, the speaking to loved ones or talking to others, or even just breathing. Sometimes if we let ourselves get really quiet and breathe, sometimes the tears just come. So if you haven't had a good cry recently and you're feeling stressed out, create that good cry for yourself. It'll be
Yeah,
good.
because yeah, after you cry, you sometimes feel a lot better. So that makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, and then also for kids, like that might be a nice topic for your kiddos since they're all under so much stress too. Um, Ways to find those releases.
Mhm.
And then the last one on my list is doing something creative. So teachers are all, for the most part, really good at this. So again, if we're doing something creative, we want to do it for our own pleasure and joy, not because we're trying to make it look perfect and not because we really want to impress all the other teachers on Instagram, but just because it's fun. So I know Mackenzie and I both like making our houses feel like comfy and pretty, like look the way that we like them to look. And so that's creative. And no one, it's the pandemic. No one's seeing the inside of my house, but it's just for me, like I like flowers. So I have this flower picture right there, like doing something creative, painting just for the sake of painting. Those are really good. So those are the 7 main tips that Emily Nagoski talks about in her Burnout book. Other things that we're told to do just as people to help with burnout, usually messaging is like to do self-care. These qualify as self-care. It's a work in progress for me, and I think for most of us, is to tell myself like more isn't necessarily better at all when it comes to self-care. And it's really about having the ability to say no and set boundaries around the things that are giving us stress, even if they're things we like. So work is a good example of that. What were you going to say, Matt?
I want to real quick
Yeah.
segue to saying no, because I have been hearing that a lot from teachers. I mean, I feel like I've gotten better at it with more years of experience, but why can saying no just be so hard? Like if admin is asking us to do this or adding these responsibilities, and it's okay to say no, but why is that so hard?
Why is it so hard?
Or like feeling guilty for saying.
Yeah, I feel guilty. And I think that goes back to teaching being a helping profession.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we are natural helpers, we don't like to reject others. We don't like to say no. We don't like others to be suffering. And so when we say no, it can feel like I'm putting myself before others. And then can be this guilt. There's also pressure in I follow a lot of folks in the anti-racist movement. And so there's a lot of pressure in just our culture and in the patriarchy that we live in, to have this pressure of do more. And so that's been deeply ingrained in us forever. And we get that message from our families, from our schools, from our institutions we're a part of, from the community, like from everywhere. And so then it's like, well, I want to be this helper and I have to say yes. Also, teachers, especially newer teachers, if you're in your first 10 years, you're usually younger than the principal, younger than the administration, and you're wanting to prove yourself, which we all want to do in the beginning of our careers. And there's always more to do. So the people above you, principals or administration, are going to be like, we need help with this. Can you do this? And there's this urge to like, yeah, I want to be a good girl. I want to get my A+ as a teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's really hard to say no.
But it is okay to say no.
It is okay.
You need to. I think especially as first-year teachers, like I think teachers that have been in it a long time, or administration especially, can forget what it's like to be that new teacher. And then it almost, it's not going to help them. And we need to support our new teachers especially.
Yeah. So yes. So practice saying no. Find a teacher buddy that you can talk about, like, and celebrate times you were able to say no. And there's
and practicing situations, I think actually, like, I don't know, like role play that with somebody. I don't know, it's just a lot of pressure, I feel like, especially on new teachers, that they want to please, like you're saying. And but it takes time. And I think that first year, especially, to focus on just your craft, and teaching isn't something that you're going to perfect the first year, and really ever. It's going to take practice. So just taking what you can handle on your plate.
Yeah, that you want it all to be sustainable, because hopefully you will teach for your whole career. So you don't want to take on too much right away. A tip that I like to tell people when they're learning how to say no is, before you get good at saying no, start building that instinct to just say, let me think about it. So because we'll just instinctively say yes. And then we think about it and we're like, oh, I don't know if I would have said yes if I thought about that. So start no matter what, even if it's a great opportunity, get in the habit, just automatically, let me think about it.
That's a really good tip.
Um, so if we're able to say no, kind of monitor what we are giving to people. So when you're volunteering for something at work, when you're sitting with your kids at a time that it's high stress, like that scenario we talked about earlier, when you're like doing report cards and parent meetings and a big project, in those times we want to say no more often because we have to make time for the things that are going to really drain us. So when we get good at setting those boundaries, so there's enough time for us, then what we want to do in that time is just tune into the things that we feel like we most need. So the tips I was giving on self-care, those are all great stress reducers. And what I like about those is it's not about like doing it really well. So it's not, in the pandemic, we were like, oh, I'm going to do self-care. So I'm going to learn how to make sourdough bread from scratch and then, take professional photos of it with fresh rosemary. Like that doesn't need to be the goal. It can just be like, I'm going to make a boxed cake, but it's fun to be with my daughter, mixing up some cake and baking it and smelling it in the house. So doing something fun that helps us recharge in that time is nice. And rest is a big one. That's not on the list because just sleeping, resting is kind of tied to breathing if we're really in a state of rest. But we need time to be doing nothing in order for our bodies to recharge. And there's things that we can do, like binge something on Netflix. That can feel like rest, but it's not really, because our brain's watching the screen and like getting kind of overstimulated. So things that don't overstimulate us but let our bodies rest are really important too.
Right now, teachers have like spring break coming up, and then we have like summer break. And what are some things that teachers could do during that time to really like recharge them or help cope with the burnout if they've been feeling that this year?
Yeah. Good question. So the first thing I'd really recommend is not working if you can. And a lot of teachers, as I understand it, have like side hustles that are also work. So like Mackenzie, you have your YouTube video. I know teachers will do like
teachers pay teachers.
What?
Teachers pay teachers, like creating products and
create products, or even like side selling like those nail stickers and like things like so everyone has like these side hustles that they're doing, and so those are fun. But if you can take a step back from side hustles for at least part of that spring break too, that would be really nice to give yourself that time. And then I would encourage everyone to the words I'm always turn back to is joy and pleasure. So joy, things that are really fun. Pleasure can be, eating a gelato that like melts in your tongue and you're just like, oh, that's so creamy and wonderful. And like your body feels pleasure eating that. So making time for things that give you joy and pleasure. What you will notice for some of us, if we're really burnt out, it's hard, like, and someone's like, oh, go have fun. We're like, no, I'm feeling really burnt out. That doesn't even sound good. And so don't beat yourself up about that. That just means you need to do the talk to others, talk to a loved one and crying. So that means that's your task, is to make some space for that so that you can have those releases, and then you'll be able to do the fun stuff. But just like that toxic positivity, if we skip over the crying, the bonding with others, the venting, and just try to stay positive, we're not really getting all of that.
Just building up. And so really taking our breaks to recover and wherever we are at with burnout, or if it is that we need to fully disconnect and recharge ourselves. What I know you're saying, like talking to our loved ones is so important, or maybe finding those people at work. What is your advice to a teacher who might not feel like they have a strong support system?
I have found that helps me stay connected to others is finding different online communities where I'm like, oh, these people, like, they feel like me, and then they're sharing their own stories and I'll share my own stories and people will post support. And so even though it's not in person, it's staying really connected and normalizing my experience, and I make friends in that way.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think, as teachers, and I think right now too, I feel like we've all gotten a lot better with the virtual connections. And so first, like seeing who at your home site you could even just email or chat with, walking by their classroom and saying hi. But I know what it's like to be at a site too, where you don't really feel a connection with somebody.
Mhm.
And I think that's where it's a really good idea to see if there's other outlets like Instagram and like seeing
Mhm.
people that you vibe with, or
Yeah.
Facebook groups. There's a lot of Facebook teacher groups.
Mhm.
And really just trying to, if you could find like one person that you just
Mhm.
feel like connected to, that you can reach out to support. Because I think with teachers, especially, you want to make sure you do have another teacher in your life that you
Mhm.
can talk to, because they get what you're going through. They can share their experience with you. And
Yeah.
it can be, I know one of my hardest years of teaching, I had a carpool that year. And honestly, that was like my lifesaver
Yeah.
that year, was just having
Yeah.
that time to talk with two other teachers every day and
Yeah.
really bring that joy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Those are really good tips.
I think also, if you're not feeling supported, to just ask for help. I think anyone, even if that is your administrator,
Mhm.
asking for help, not, you might not know what resources are available. And I think
Yeah.
it's really important that we ask for help. I think sometimes as teachers, we want to do everything we can and we hold it
Mhm.
all. And it's like, we wear a lot of hats, but
Yeah.
asking for help, even if it's like working with another student, like reaching out to a
Yeah.
school counselor or another teacher who might have had that student, and asking for help and support in your professional life too, because that, like you're saying, can affect our personal lives and mental health so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's just so much on this topic. I feel like I could talk forever.
I know. Well, thank you so much for just all of your information and really caring about others and the mental health, because it's such an important topic. And thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the
Such
work
a
that you
difference.
do and for inviting me. And I just want to, like, one last thing that I want to say to all the teachers out there, um, is that this has been a really hard year. If you're watching this in 2021, or if we're still in the pandemic in 2022 and you're watching this, but it's been a really, really hard time. And if you've been really low and you've noticed like your negative self-talk really spiking and you're kind of shut down and frozen, you don't feel like yourself, it doesn't have to be this way forever. And like Mackenzie said, please reach out for support. And then if you are noticing, there's an increase in suicidal thoughts and suicidality during this time, and burnout can lead to depression and increase our thoughts of self-harming or just kind of wanting everything to end. And so I just want to name that you're not alone if you're having thoughts like that, and that there are resources out there to help you. So please reach out for support.
Yeah, and I will link all of Megan's information too, down in the description, so that
Cool.
you can use that as a resource too. Well, thank you so much, Megan.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mackenzie. Thank you for all that you do.
All right, bye.
Bye.